We realize that this solid waste has to be dealt with, but why does it have to be dealt with in a community?
Environmental justice embraces the principle that all people and communities are entitled to equal protection of our environmental laws.
Environmental justice means that no group of people should bear a disproportionate share of the negative environmental consequences resulting from federal, state, local, and tribal programs and policies.
The environmental justice movement has really expanded the definition of environmentalism to include where we live, work, and play. It has brought into the issue of not only healthy environments, but also healthy people and healthy communities.
In 1982, Warren County, North Carolina put environmental justice on the national agenda. Residents of this poor African-American community protested the siting of a hazardous waste landfill, charging that the decision amounted to environmental racism. Over 500 people, including prominent civil rights leaders, were arrested during demonstrations. The protests and arrests in Warren County brought national attention to environmental discrimination and led Congress to request an assessment of the issue by the U.S. General Accounting Office. In 1983, GAO found that 3 out of 4 hazardous waste facilities in the Southeast were located in areas with higher percentages of poor and minority populations. GAO's report was followed by others from government agencies, academic institutions, and public interest organizations, accumulating substantial evidence to support environmental justice concerns. In 1992, EPA concluded that low-income and minority communities seem to bear a greater risk from environmental hazards. To address the issue, EPA created an Office of Environmental Justice and established a National Advisory Council. In response to these concerns, President Clinton signed Executive Order 12898 in 1994, directing federal agencies to make environmental justice part of their mission. DOD is working with the military departments to meet this challenge.
When President Clinton issued Executive Order 12898 on environmental justice, he wanted to ensure that all federal agencies consider whether their programs, policies, and activities pose a disproportionately high and adverse effect on the human health and environment of minority and low-income populations.
Coordinating with the Federal Interagency Working Group on Environmental Justice, DOD adopted a strategy in 1995 designed to incorporate the goals of the executive order into existing programs and daily operations. Key to this strategy is assessing environmental justice impacts, increasing public involvement in DOD activities that affect low-income and minority populations, incorporating environmental justice principles into DOD training programs, and improving communication among federal, state, tribal, and local government agencies, as well as non-government organizations. To help installations understand how to apply these strategic objectives, the Army Environmental Policy Institute partnered with Clark Atlanta University to study military installations with potential environmental justice concerns. The study recommends that we engage our local communities and other stakeholders in an ongoing dialogue to understand the community and its special circumstances, understand the potential impacts on the community, and develop community-based solutions.
Well, we're coming in here to the what we think was the village of Nuxuni.
At Vandenberg Air Force Base in Southern California, the Air Force has a memorandum of agreement with the Chumash tribe to protect and preserve sacred and historic sites.
Well, as part of our Cultural Resources Management program here at Vandenberg, we strive really to protect sites like this village site of Nuxuni. and to keep all construction away from these areas if we can.
What you see here is Coreopsis, and it's only found in Chumash territory. We call them ghost people. We have an elder that trained us or taught us that when you see this, it means at one time our people walked here. The MOA that we agreed upon a few years ago allows us to do each burial or remains or project on a one-to-one basis, and we have input, which is an important thing to all of us. The government or the bases in the area have to talk to the people. If you don't talk to the people and have their opinion of what's going on around them, there is no understanding.
Effective communication is essential to understanding local communities. Sometimes it requires breaking down language barriers to give stakeholders greater access to information. As part of its public outreach, Naval Station San Diego publishes newsletters and public hearing notices in English, Spanish, and Tagalog to ensure communication with diverse community members. In San Francisco at Hunters Point Shipyard, the Navy posts multilingual signs warning against environmental hazards. In some areas of America, subsistence hunting, fishing, and food gathering is a way of life, whether a cultural tradition or a matter of survival. Any contamination of the environment is a serious concern because toxic chemicals may be absorbed into plants and animals and then consumed by local residents unaware of the health risk.
DOD has to figure a way where we can communicate with those people that are most likely to be impacted and have them feel free to communicate with us to tell us the information that we need to evaluate their health risks. And these things include the types of food that they eat and where they get it, where do they collect it, and how much do they eat. Our best successes in the Air Force have been at sites where we've talked to the people that eat the food and the people that have the concerns. They have a few questions that they want answered. Number one, is there a contaminant there? Number two, am I being exposed to it? And number three, what are the health effects that I might look for?
Identifying the potential impacts on a community often requires an in-depth understanding of the culture. Native Americans, for example, may experience adverse social effects if a historically sacred site is subjected to adverse environmental impacts.
One of the gifts that are greatest to our Indian people have always been sage and cedar, sweetgrass and water, more powerful than gold and oil and minerals, because it has a way to calm the spirit and to heal the troubled mind and the soul.
The Medicine Bluffs at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, are sacred for several Native American tribes. However, these bluffs were once considered ideal for climbing and rappelling exercises to train our soldiers. In response to concerns voiced by local Native Americans, the Army agreed to stop training on the bluffs to avoid impacts on this sacred site. To assess potential impacts on Native American resources, the Navy mapped tribal reservations and ancestral homelands, showing their geographical relationship to installations. These maps guide consultations with Native Americans before construction, training, and land management decisions are made.